Hi, guys, it's John here. It is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. I want to share something interesting just because this is what's been coming up for me now for a while. And let me explain, first of all, that I felt guided to do this channel or start putting myself out there months and months ago, probably 6 or 8 months ago at least. And even then, before that, I had always kind of thought about it, but I really felt pulled to do it in that time frame. And I kept putting it off because there's always reasons, right? Like reality was conflicting and stuff like that. And there's hesitation, like what do I have to say? And other people are already saying what I want to say, and things like that. And then more recently, in the past couple months, I would notice a lot like that. Something that I had been thinking about a month or two, or a week, couple weeks, or 10 days, or yesterday, that other people would be talking about it. And I'm like, oh, you know not that I need to sort of claim that space or whatever, but clearly I was kind of tapping into the collective unconscious, which is really pretty cool in and of itself. um, and so of course other people are expressing the same kind of topics or touching on the same kind of topics that I had been thinking about doing, and they're doing it in their own unique way. And there's a lot of great people that I subscribe to who, have kept me entertained for a very long time. Although, my I have become less interested in the kind of craziness out there, because I find when I kind of concentrate or focus on that too much, it kind of lowers my energy. So, it's in the realm of energetic hygiene. I had thought I got to stop listening to all this stuff about like crazy Republicans and the idiocy and all the chaos out there and stuff, because it's not really doing anything for me. And I started listening more to music and other things that were more inspiring. And I still listen to a few people. I don't listen as much as I used to, but I still subscribe to all the people that I have for several years. So when I first started this channel, and this is where the more interesting stuff get into the more interesting stuff. When I first started this channel and launched it, I immediately came up with a list of like 30 topics I thought were worth discussing or sharing or talking about. And I have a to-do list manager on my phone, and they're all there, right? Now, many of them are kind of in the realm of bitching or kvetching about reality, and I see my video on reality as stupid because it is. Let's face it, it's just absurd and ridiculous. Like, what the hell are we doing here, kind of thing. It's crazy. I've actually had conversations with Spirit about this, and they say, yeah, life is full of paradoxes, and I'm like, well, I'm not really. Paradoxes don't really solve anything for me. They're like riddles. How can two things be true at once? That's a whole debate in and of itself. Nonetheless, here we are in 3D reality where, there's all kinds of crazy going on out there. So what would happen in the past couple weeks is I would think about, oh, I got to talk about this and talk about that, and sort of nitpicking about reality, and kvetching about reality. And then when I would sort of sit down to do it, I would get this feeling in my gut like, no, I shouldn't do this. And I'm like, yeah, but intellectually it's really interesting, and I know other people out there would connect to my line of thinking in similar ways, and we're experiencing the same kind of things. And, it's interesting and fun, and to talk about and share those things because we connect on that level. Many of us have similar views about how distorted and ridiculous reality is, and we're trying to understand why it is that way. See my video on paradigms. So, okay, so I sit down to do these subjects, and then my sort of higher self or my intuition says no. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, what about that? Like, I mean, I thought that's what I'm supposed to be here doing because, like I said, I felt called to do this, and I still do. I'm like, well, that takes a whole bunch of stuff off the table. And, you know, so here's my sense of what's going on there. And I'm sharing this because I would suspect there's other people having the same experience, the people who are expressing themselves online. And which is this is my theory. My theory is that spirit really doesn't want us focusing our attention too much on the negative, but because by doing so we're feeding it. We're feeding that paradigm. There's like two sides to every coin. There's the chaos and crazy side and the dark side, and then us reacting to that or responding to it is basically injecting our psychic energy into it, and thereby kind of maintaining that paradigm and inflating it, actually, because it's all about combat. It's about right and wrong and good and bad and light and dark, right? So, even though we're coming at it from a light perspective, we're feeding it by paying attention to it and concentrating on it. And like I said, putting our psychic energy into it. Now, if we are light workers, let's say we incarnated here to help the earth ascend, we're probably powerful beings. Well, we are. Our thought forms are very powerful and our consciousness is very powerful. And, and B, it's easy for us to get caught up in the glamour or the illusion of, reality. And as we move into higher levels of consciousness, in a sense, we're supposed to transcend that. So it's very tempting because, we're outraged by all this insanity. And it's kind of like, if it bleeds, it leads, as they used to say in the press, which is, people want to stop and look at car crashes because well, I don't, but, a lot of people do because it's fascinating, even if it's disturbing and dark. Which is a kind of an interesting segue into a side note, which is that I because of the kind of work I'm doing, I often at night I'll watch some Netflix or whatever, and a lot, and I kind of like sci-fi because I have ever since I was a child. I've read science fiction, and that level of violence is just like insane. It's like it doesn't even jive with reality, and it seems to be getting more and more extreme. And I wonder how that's affecting humanity, especially on a subconscious level. This is like really dark. All this, also all the apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic stuff as well. But anyway, so to summarize, it's like my the lower part of myself, the intellectual part of myself, the being part of myself that is outraged by what the hell is going on the planet, and it is totally outrageous. Wants to talk about those things and discuss them, and the higher part of myself is saying like, no, we don't, no, let's not do that. So, like I said, then when I say to them, I say, well, what am I supposed to talk about? They say, well, just tell your stories, and I will do that, and that is on my to-do list. And I'm not sure what purpose that serves. I think it might just be sort of laying some groundwork or mapping out territory for people who are yet to come into awakening or whatever, so that they will have frames of reference or points that they can, roadmaps, kind of like things that they can connect to so that they realize they're not going crazy. Um, um, but yeah, like a lot of the stuff that I want to talk about, Spirit doesn't actually want me to talk about. I'll give you another example in more literal terms of how this can kind of play out. There's levels of dimensional awareness that we don't necessarily carry in our consciousness or intellectually at least. So years ago, a friend of mine who was actually sort of in the spiritual community, a teacher, hired me to do a birth chart analysis for their newborn grandchild, and this was going to be a gift to the parents. I don't know, was it the christening or something? It was tied to some kind of an event, And I'm a pretty good astrologer. Like I would spend hours doing readings, and analyzing and studying charts and stuff. And I can also tap in intuitively, and often I could tap into very deep aspects of things. And people would say things like, nobody has ever expressed that to me that way before, even myself, about me. And sometimes it would bring people to tears and stuff, it was wonderful to be able to connect on a very deep and profound level that way. And I'm getting chills saying this right now. So anyway, I sit down to work on this reading for this newborn, and either the soul or the higher self or the guides of this child come to me and very clearly ask me not to do the analysis, the birth chart analysis. And I was kind of like really taken aback. I'm like, what? Seriously? You know? And I was informed that by doing so, it would alter their life course. Like if that if their parents had this awareness, it would alter the way that they would interact with and behave towards this child. And of course, I was just like, this touched me very deeply, and I was just like, oh, well, I don't want to screw up somebody's whole incarnation, so of course not. I won't do it. Absolutely not. And when I think of that, even now, I I get it's very emotional. And of course, I go back to the person who had asked me to do this, and they were kind of upset because this was going to be a special gift, and you know this they had sort of banked on this, and they were looking forward to the surprise and interest that that this would elicit from the parents. And it actually, the person was kind of upset with me for sort of leaving them in the lurch. But I'm like, well, the soul of this child asked me not to do this. I just I can't do it. You know, so I'm very sensitive to that. There's certain things that I guess just we're not supposed to know. um, and that kind of ties into this whole thing about not talking about certain subjects. It's not like these subjects aren't out there. In this case, it's just that with our intellectual and psychic energy, it's we're feeding it, and it's also affecting us by focusing on it. It's lowering our level of energy or consciousness. So this is kind of a bit odd. I did say that I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off, and not that this will piss people off, but one of the things about me, I'm not afraid to say things that are challenging or that run kind of counter to, standard lines of thinking or whatever. And so that's probably why I'm here. I wanted to share that. Is there anything else along those lines? Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to work on, and I'm waiting for the right space and privacy to do that. This Mercury retrograde is kind of crazy. It's just, it's very powerful because Mercury is squaring Pluto as it retrogrades, and in my case, it's it's touching some very sensitive points in my chart. So there also is this kind of energy about sort of laying low a bit right now, which I don't have a problem respecting. So anyway, I welcome your thoughts and, of course, your likes and subscribes and shares and your comments, especially those who are willing to comment. I really appreciate it. And this is just something I wanted to share because, like I said, every time I went to start recording something in the past week or two, on many occasions, I was stopped. It's kind of weird. It's kind of the opposite of what I was expecting. Yeah, and I know that what I'm saying here kind of contradicts some of the other content I've already posted. Um, but there's a part of me, the three-dimensional part of me, certain things I really care about, like that I think are very important, like climate change. And so that part of me, like there's certain things I'm just going to need to do. But I do recognize, like I said, the contradiction between what I'm saying here, what I'm being guided to do, versus what I am doing in some cases. But like Spirit has said to me, life is full of paradoxes. And on that note, I'll add that I have had many experiences of where I have experienced multidimensional aspects of myself. And on higher dimensional aspects of myself, I've literally had the experience of seeing how certain things are true on higher dimensions that aren't true here. So I guess that is where the paradoxes come from. And that's just a part of being in three-dimensional reality, I suppose. Anyway, thanks for listening, liking, sharing, subscribing. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your comments. For those who take the time to do that, have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.